Correct. So we'll still have distribution issues, but things will change for us over these next 9 years, okay? They'll change most dramatically for large chunks of the population in the United States over the next 4 years, through 2024.
Is that because of the monetary changes, or
they're
social, or
all of it? They're just a minor participation in there, okay? They're a big part, the monetary, the cryptos and all of that. There's going to be big amounts of disruption. Our political system is shifting. Our social interconnections are all shifting. Everything's in a state of change. Mm-hmm. Every 15 years, society pretty much changes out everything anyway. But we're in a very intense period of change through 2024 that'll sort of slack off a bit through 2029 and will stabilize a bit. But it's the sci-fi world. It's the combination, okay? So we're actually in that stage right now where somebody's going to be working on a blockchain smart contract. They're going to get an idea, a thought. It's going to lead to a new kind of consensus algorithm that'll be 3 times faster. And you don't have to do anything other than upgrade your mining servers. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, all of the cryptocurrencies become 3 times faster. Just because this guy had a particular sorting algorithm in the consensus algorithm, he just had an insight that allows us to eliminate 4 steps or something. I'm just hypothesizing, right? But that alone, because of that means at that moment, somebody else can do a point of sale system design that didn't exist 2 moments before because it was that much faster. Okay, because it's now that much faster, we can do this. And because it's a software implementation, and as soon as the software implementation and the speed of it is heard about by the miners, they all introduce it. They all put it in their software right away, and it happens right away.
The faster they get it in, the more money they make.
Exactly.
Or the more whatever they make.
Right, the more cryptocurrencies, right. And so you got people that'll develop processes first, and then ultimately devices. It'll translate all the way down to there. And every single one of these that will fold on in will trigger other new devices, other new ideas, other new processes, and other efficiencies. So we're at that point where software is going to eat, as I say. Software is eating the planet, but it's in our benefit because it's going to make us that much more powerful. So we are Borg right now. We just don't have them built in, and there's no need for that. And especially if you can just put it all in a device and you get your device to the point where it can do real-time processing of your speech or your thought patterns, put down into encapsulated activating commands, that sort of thing. At that stage, the idea that you'd ever have to do an implant is absurd. These guys that are transhumanist with all of the weird devices and stuff, it's like, why bother? I can get a microscope put onto my eye and wired into my brain and stuff, but it's ever so much cheaper and easier to just upgrade the camera here, put a little software patch, and tell my phone, just take all those photos and so forth, because it's a bitch printing out of my mind with the attached software and stuff.
Well, they have those translator sticks. Have you seen?
I've seen
those.
I
saw those. I'm like, boy, we're really moving up.
I know.
And you just talk into it, and they talk into it, and it speaks it back.
And now
you don't have to learn a language.
You don't even need the stick. You can get it in software.
You get exactly
as apps. Yeah,
that's crazy. I want to talk to you before. I want to talk to you about the Facebook situation with the Libra coin. Have you thought about that at all?
Sure. And
what's your take on it? And I see it as a corporate attempt to get into the game.
You're accurate. I see it more as a move of desperation.
Well,
okay, because so as a software engineer, I am aware of practices in doing software engineering, especially what's known as UX, user experience, that are designed to create conditions in your mind to boost certain neurotransmitters. Okay, these software implementations, you'll find them in Twitter, you'll find them on Facebook, YouTube, and so on. And they're designed to addict you, to produce more dopamine. Okay, so that you'll stay on the platforms longer. And it's not evil necessarily. It's just part of what it is for corporate software programming. And so there's actually software code that's written, that's tweaked in order to do certain things on the interface, flashlights and noises or whatever, or notifications, highlighting your name, putting borders around it, all these things to create dopamine in the brain at higher levels than normal. This is because they were able to find out they could get people to sign up, be attracted to, sign up, and stay longer on these platforms, which led to more money for the owners of the platforms. Okay. Facebook has a problem, though, as do all of these platforms. That effect wears off. All right? The longer you use the stuff, the less dopamine response you have to the little tricks. So that's why they have to keep doing interface changes all the time to try and raise this up. At some point, they step off that interface chain and they make an update that actually reduces the dopamine levels, and people start leaving in droves.
Which, most of my friends are saying, I don't really use that anymore.
Exactly. And they'll migrate to some other platform where they're getting that same level of emotional kick through the neurotransmitters that they used to get. One of the reasons that I say it's an act of desperation is because you can say, and I think that there's some evidence to this, that the idea that the Libra is to engineer yet another hook for you to keep you on their platform. Okay, if you've got money, if you've got skin in the game that you can translate into something real world, like you can sell the Libra coin for dollars or whatever, or
Litecoin.
Or Litecoin, but I'm just saying Libra specifically, right?
Right.
That'll keep you on Facebook longer. Mm-hmm. And Facebook reached their peak about, I think it was like 2014 in terms of number of people signing up, and it's crashing. The same thing is true of Amazon. And so Amazon they've crashed. Their growth rate on their Prime experience is dropping hugely, big percentages every year. Yeah. And so they're doing things as well. YouTube is doing this, and now YouTube and Google have shot themselves in the foot, as have all of these other guys, because they're doing the censorship and they're trying to control it as both a publisher and a platform. The things they're doing to engineer as a platform are now being undone by the censorship being run at the macro level by the owners. So the IT guys are always fighting what the owners of the companies are doing, because the things they're engineering for aren't working anymore against what the owners are doing. Mm-hmm. But the Libra, I think, in my opinion, is an attempt, not last ditch, but I think Facebook is on its way to becoming the next MySpace. And that people are now migrating over to those other media, which are owned by Facebook or Twitter or these guys, but nonetheless, the Twitter interface just changed. Like yesterday, I think they rolled out the new interface on computers.
On mobile?
I haven't seen it on mobile yet. Kathy uses the mobile, and she said it hasn't changed, but sooner or later they'll get to that. But in their new interface on desktop, it sucks. You can see that they've lost that interstitial edge, which is the dopamine from one screen to the next being maintained. Now it doesn't exist. They've done some consolidation that's taken out some of the things, so it's actually going to cause fewer and fewer people to use it. So in my opinion, just looking at the new design, so Twitter's going to have to do something, but places like Instagram are growing and some of these others. So anyway, though, so I think Libra was the idea that, well, we'll hook them with money as well. So they'll have to contribute to Facebook because they're going to get paid by us. Mm-hmm. And if they're not actively using the Facebook, then their Libra coins won't be worth anything, and so on. Now, the recent, but of course, then they ran into the real world problems with the politicos.
Right.
So will it even ever be launched? And even if it is launched, it's not mine.
Stable coin that is linked to the dollars. Why?
Yeah, let's not even call it a stable coin.
Well, yeah,
it's an in-house token, is what it is, right? It's basically Facebook controls how many there are. They can create them as they want, and so on. And if I were a young person, and I knew that Libra coin was actually going to actually be launched, the thing I would do would be to desperately seek employment with Facebook as rapidly as possible, so I can get in on the inside and start gaming the Libra coin from the inside. Because
they're going to pay them out as bonuses to their people all the time. Absolutely.
All of that kind of stuff, right?
To me, I see all the horrible parts of this. I wouldn't even call it a blockchain, but
right. No, it's not. It's not. There's no consensus algorithm or anything.
Right. But the good, the only good I would see coming of it is the concept of introducing it to 2 billion people. that currently, well, they say, use Facebook as kind of a gateway to a real cryptocurrency. Because if you get 2 billion people with this thing that Facebook likes to call a cryptocurrency, and they end up giving them a lot away, which they probably will, and they are traded on exchanges, whereas they're supposed to be pegged, you're going to have people say, oh, wow, I have my first cryptocurrency, and wait.
Arbitrage.
Yeah.
Right.
Litecoin just went up 100%, and my stable coin is not moving at all.
Right.
I'm going to flip this for a...
And that's one of the reasons that I think that the politicos are saying that thou shalt not. Okay, because they're basically going to try and get a law put through fairly quick.
To stop. Well, there's so many reasons to stop them.
Yeah, but see, this is interesting too, because it means that because of what's going on now, all right, so most people aren't aware, but any laws Congress are going to vote on are usually cranked out and known by the end of January of that year. Okay, so they're never going to introduce a potential law in November that wasn't first looked at by the party insiders and formalized that January, even though they say that they're going to bring it out in August.
They say a lot of things.
Right, exactly. So, but because they're having to now discuss a law being brought up this year to go through Congress to stop Facebook and any other social media from wholly owning this, it appears as though that was a step outside of the political framework that Facebook took even coming up with the idea.
For a lot of people, it was a big surprise. People knew they were working on it, but it was a big surprise to announce it so prematurely. I mean, it's just a white paper.
Right.
And see, that gets to my side of looking at the Road to Ruta stuff and looking at the viability of Deutsche Bank. And Deutsche Bank has always been, to me, that the prime trigger of a derivative problem. Largest derivative holder bank, and they're pushing it. I mean, governments are pushing it out. They've known for decades this was a criminal bank, and now they're filing lawsuits all of a sudden when Deutsche Bank's stock has never been lower, they've never been in worse shape, and then they're piling on saying, "Oh, you financed Trump, you need to be investigated. You money laundered trillions out of Danske Bank in Europe. You need to be, we're going after you now."
Right.
It's going to trigger the derivative chaos. It has to. What else? Why else would they be doing that unless?
Okay, we don't ask why questions. Okay, because that goes to intent.
Okay.
And it could be, we could speculate that it's simply piling on. Right. You got a guy on the ground. He's got the football. He was tackled, and you got another guy that plopped on him too. So why did the other 30 people pile on?
Because he was already.
Because he's already down. He's already down. There's no need for any of them to move, but they do. So we can't ask why, okay? Because it really goes to something that may not be pertinent to what we want to figure out. But the timing of it all, it's suspicious as hell. The fact that it's a white paper suggested to me initially that it was a distraction, kind of a trial balloon. Let's run it up the flag and see if anybody salutes. Why? Not because we care if they salute or not, but because we know everybody will be looking at the damn flag while we're off doing something else. Right. And so I never really considered it to be anything other than that sort of a distraction. Mm-hmm. I don't know that they'll ever actually implement it. It may be legally moved out. They may want to have it legally stopped. Why is this? Why would Facebook, you could be really evil and you could say, Facebook is really damn smart. And that their chief competitor, that nobody ever thinks is their competitor, was working very heavily and hard on cryptocurrencies. How about if we at Facebook get everybody in the Congress really pissed at us, such that they'll make a law saying that big social media and corporations can't own and create their own cryptocurrencies. And all we have to do is a cheap little thing of hire a couple of people for a while, put them on a project, write a white paper. No intention of backing it up with IT guys or equipment or any of this. And we do it, they get a law passed against it because we're the evil ones, and our chief competitor gets the rug taken out from underneath them, and that's Amazon.
Yeah, I was going to say Amazon. Yeah,
Amazon.
Because that's been rumored for a long time, and people were very surprised that it was Facebook that jumped out before Amazon.
And Amazon's put huge amounts of money into it, and infrastructure, and hired people, and thought about it,
and secured the websites with the Bitcoin and Litecoin.
Yeah, see, and people don't think of Facebook being a competitor to Amazon, but they are. Amazon is now competing directly against Facebook and Google. And it's happening at a level that is the back end of all the advertising. Okay? And so there's all of this stuff going on. So we find ourselves sitting here as though we were sitting around the same table, which probably existed at that time, in like the time of Teddy Roosevelt. And we're just bitching and moaning about being crushed by the trusts. Those damn trusts are just eating us alive. The tariffs, we can't get out of here. People are dying. And the trusts are the evil of the world. And Teddy Roosevelt, who was similar in a bombastic personality style to Trump. And what did he do? He busted up the trust. How did he do it? He got what was called yellow journalists, who were the
what does that sound like? Yeah.
They were the alternative journalists of the time, the yellow journalists,
That's
the tabloids,
yellow.
right?
Yeah.
Right, and because they were on cheap yellow paper.
Yeah.
Not the good quality stuff that the quality papers ran, and that's why they called it quality papers. And so they got the yellow journalist. He got the yellow journalist behind the effort, and socially engineered in his day the bust up of these very large conglomerates that were every bit as dominating of their day, more so even, than the social media are of ours. So are we on a parallel track? It sure would seem so.
Does sound like it.
Yeah. And what was the outgrowth of the trust busting? Everybody says, oh, well, the trust busting led directly to Jekyll Island and the creation of the Fed. Now, I don't know that you can connect the two together, but I do know that the Fed never could have been created had the trust exist. Okay, so they were done by 1909. The trusts were done. They were kaput. 1913, we get the Fed in by that period of time. But the effect of the trust being busted led to, ultimately, to the creation of the Internal Revenue Service, which also couldn't have existed at the time that the trusts were there. And the trade-off was the Internal Revenue Service was sold to the population of the United States as being a good thing. The income tax was a good thing because with income tax, there would be no need for tariffs because the government would have secure funding. And it had lived on tariffs. Yeah. Well, the thing about tariffs is it always socks the poor more than the rich. Yeah. And it fluctuates based on buying demand and can change at a moment's whim if all of a sudden everybody decides, oh, tea is yucky, let's go drink coffee, and coffee has no tariffs, the government doesn't get any revenue.
And now we're seeing Trump and tariffs everywhere, and I mean, it does sound like it's playing all out again. And a potential change in the currency.
Which occurred with the Federal Reserve, so we're echoing that.
Yeah.
And what happened was that the gold currencies that were in existence at the time that the trusts were in existence and were the mainstay of the trust power, because the trust was a conglomeration of the wealth into central hands, socking more and more and more and more gold and silver into fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer hands, decreasing the amount of circulating currencies.
And to me, how my work falls in with the gold in the Grand Canyon. That's right when it was found. It's 1909, 1910.
And if we had enough gold to pave streets, it's worth exactly as much as asphalt.
Absolutely.
And they were afraid of that because the governments and the trust, right, for lots of different reasons, the health of the planetary society was at risk. Now we're in a very good situation, okay? Cryptocurrencies are going to free humanity in ways that we've never even considered. And some of them are that with cryptocurrencies, it's going to be very difficult as the cryptocurrencies build out. It may even be impossible for a centralized trust to ever build up again because of the nature of cryptocurrencies themselves. They're not in a position where you're going to want to hoard and hoard and hoard and hoard, right? And so, and the power structure that is represented by them, at least with cryptocurrencies, unlike the Federal Reserve fiat, with cryptocurrencies you have no lying allowed. No,
it's math.
It's math, exactly. And it's replicable, and you can always go back and look at it, right? Anybody can because it's open. So all different kinds of cool stuff from it.
Well, there are cryptocurrencies that lying is allowed, something like EOS that is decentralized to a point, or the Facebook coin, the Libra coin. They can lie and cheat if they...
But those, okay, so we got to really start talking precision, right? Mined coins, blockchains, consensus
work
algorithm. Correct. And I think even, I don't like the proof of stake stuff in terms of that, but, own your coins, have your keys.
In your own possession. In your own possession,
that kind of thing. And lying is not allowed on the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you can have $21 trillion, or I think it's up to $40 trillion, disappear out of the Pentagon budget. Okay.
That's just the stuff they tell you about.
That's the stuff that we found,
Yes.
that we're able to
imagine what we didn't find.
Correct. But even then, think of this logic here. Cryptocurrencies prevent that. Because there is the blockchain, which is a distributed ledger that anybody can look at, you can't have millions or any amount go missing. You can be sort of true, or that's a factual statement. You can't have trillions go missing. You can have people that are careless, like Max Kaiser, and he can dribble bitcoins out of his pocket as he's walking down the street, and those bitcoins are lost forever. But it's not like they've gone missing. Someone's using them surreptitiously to put stuff into space. So the world at a currency level is like once software eats the currency, then currency can't be manipulated.
And those controllers that we have today, which use the currency of today as a manipulation tool, will no longer have that power.
Correct. And they're scared shitless of it.
Did you hear that, Dick Allgaier? That's my latest fight with Dick.
And they don't like this. And the centralized authorities won't move forward in the same structure that we have now. Okay, just as we've seen a generalized trend of the distribution. Okay, decentralized social order means that you're pushing things down further and further and spreading it out among more and more people. That's basically what you're talking about, is decentralized everything. And so we've been talking about the potential for decentralized toilet paper production, this sort of thing, right? But decentralization we've been on this path since probably since the Council of Nicaea, 325 AD. Okay.
That was where they split up the Bible into what would be put in the Bible and all that?
And they told 1,200 different Christian cults. The Emperor Constantine got them all there, and said, I chatted with my dude here, my priest dude, and he tells me that Christ did this, that, and the other thing. Y'all agree? And the 1,200 guys stood up and said, no, we don't agree. That's a bunch of horseshit. Our Christ didn't do that. He didn't do any of this. He didn't live there, didn't walk this, whatever. And Constantine waves his hands, and his soldiers come in from the side of the wall, and they kill 36 people. 36 people dead. And Constantine says, I've been talking to my priest here. He tells me Christ did this, he did that, and he did this. We all agree? Oh yeah, no shit, we all agree. And then all of 1,200 different cults with 1,200 different interpretations of non-facts, of perceptions, all fused into what became the Catholic religion. And that was the peak of centralization. Since then, it's all been fading away. One of the things we have that we know this is the Queen of England. Okay? It doesn't have the power that the kings and queens used to have. Right. And in fact, it won't be too much longer, and the royals will be subject to prosecution if they leave England. Maybe even if they just go to Ireland or Scotland. And it'll be prosecution for crimes that they've committed, but that are not crimes under the structure there, but they've been sort of pushed out on the rest of the world as not being crimes, but we're changing now, right? And so it used to be that any Catholic priest could be a pedophile with impunity for as long as they lived. Not so anymore. Catholic Church is busted up. Decentralized power is busting things up. Now we have the common ORAC effect. A single person sitting in a computer way off in the woods can come up with an algorithm and use their computer to do cracking, hacking, etc., extraction of information, or they may be sitting in a two-story place in England, and you've got Gary McKinnon saying, "Hey, extraterrestrial fleets," and so power shifts, and we have all of this distribution of it. As that power shifts out into the society, it will be the best of times, and it'll be the worst of times. It'll be our tale of two cities. Because you'll have people that will be as batshit crazy as possible, and they'll try and take over Unity devices and make them into weapons, which is the worst fear of government, right? But at the same time, you'll have people that will take their over Unity device, monkey with it, and be able to go on in and suck radiation right out of nuclear waste, turning it into inert material. And it'll all happen because of this combination of information being distributed and piling on. So we're going to distribute, now we're going to all pile on.
The way you explain this stuff, it makes it all. It seems so common sense when you speak that way, and when I'm in the middle of it, fighting on YouTube, fighting all these people, it gets more convoluted, and it's not until you stand back and take a look at it, and that's what I love about what you do. I have one big question that it's not big, it's little to me, I don't even care, but everybody always asks me, will we see those $100,000 Bitcoin parties this year, or you think it's more like next year?
I don't have anything that would suggest that it's delayed past this year. I don't have any kind of data in any of the old sets, right, where the timing has always been brutal. When I got it right, it was always spectacularly right. When it was wrong, there was just no way of telling when the stuff was going to show up. But it turns out that of all of those timing things, especially long-term data sets, the majority of the items, as described, ended up manifesting, just not within the time period.
Right.
So I don't have any feeling about it because I'm not going to do anything about it, right?
Right, you're a hodler.
I'm a hodler. Well, the thing too is, when we reach, so there was a serious consideration in the data that talked about the spend out period. Mm-hmm. Okay, that spend out period was part of our entry into Sci-Fi world. The spend out,
which has started as of yesterday.
Correct. Well, no, it started long before, but it's been the temporal marker that clearly identified the door's been open into it was yesterday. Now, it'll take the next 3 or 4 years before we get up to the point where people, and they won't ever even look around and say, oh, geez, we're in Sci-Fi world. They'll just accept it because it'll be creeping into them, right? Maybe 4 years from now, we've got robotics manufactured down to the point where everybody gets Rosie the robot made to do their dishes and stuff. But we'll have those kind of jumps, and that's what's going to happen. So the $100,000 parties will occur after. That was of less interest to me actually than the $30,000 to $60,000 or $30,000 to $64,000 range. Okay, because in the $30,000 to $64,000 range for Bitcoin, that's when people are going to start spending out, and because and they're going to spend out because the ratio of value and the quality of the value will be so high that they'll feel comfortable in spending their, and not being hodlers anymore, and that term will start fading away. It'll be treated more as a different kind of an investment as opposed to the emotional connection we have with the word hodler, right? Because you're hodling out for a period, for a time, not for a goal. You're not hodling to, like Joe, he did a little temporary hodl in order to buy the Tesla. Right. That was smart. That was a little time frame. But for all the hodlers, there is some point in the future where you will feel comfortable not being a hodler.
And you spend your crypto, you hang on, you're not looking for a dollar type of gain, you're going to use your crypto for the reason you got them, which was to buy a house or a car
or a world trip or a trip to the moon or whatever the hell.
Save the hungry, whatever it is.
Exactly, whatever was your motivation on it, all of that, right. And so that was the interesting part for me, because we would be some period into the Sci-Fi world. So it might be that we're 6 months, might be we're 18 months. There's just no way of telling in there, right? But at some point we'll cross that threshold, and the width of that threshold was like, as I always figured around 30,000 to 64,000, but it's legitimately, we almost touched it with the 20,000 previous price, right? Because imagine what would have happened had the price maintained at that level. How many people would be buying the Teslas, Oh, no, I don't want to cruise, but I'll buy the damn cruise ship.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Right. So that kind of thing. And so here's the thing. We've got people like McAfee saying next year.
Right.
Okay, that by 2020... $1 million. Right, and here's the thing, okay, so there's going to be some things that happen to events this summer, and that is before the equinox, so before the 23rd of September, and those things will be able to be used as a judge for when that will occur more accurately. All right. So if certain things occur over August,
These are things in your data, or
no, in the real world.
Okay.
Okay. But no, I'm looking at them because there's real world things like the Litecoin halving. Okay. So if Litecoin maintains the traditional pattern of the halving, then we can say whatever the results are for Bitcoin relative to that, next March through May is going to be a spectacular time, no matter what the base price is for Bitcoin from that period on. Because we don't have proof yet that Bitcoin will maintain its pattern. Its pattern is to nearly double in 30 days following its halving.
Right.
All right?
But it's different today. There's a hell of a lot more derivative exchanges out there and all that.
And so we don't know it'll
Right.
continue. But if the patterns continue, we'll have a temporal clue with how Litecoin goes through its halving. And so there are people that are looking at that halving and the social interaction of it very carefully based on to just be able to determine what their Bitcoin issues are going to be next year, right? But there's a couple of other things that will occur before September that will happen within the greater world in which we live, the politics and money and these kind of things. Some of these things include the distribution and how they're going to get rid of Deutsche Bank. And I don't think that the derivatives are ever going to pop. It's never going to be a crisis that way because of the derivatives are ephemeral. All right, so here's the thing. At the moment, you've got some village in Norway that's got an investment in XYZ through Deutsche Bank. In order to make them whole, all that is required in order for them to be made whole when Deutsche Bank goes down is to have some other entity sign for that.
Right.
Okay. So
But who? I mean, and this is what I mean. I've argued this point. The derivative issue was set up on purpose by the
I agree.
deregulation of derivatives, or the non-regulation of derivatives in the late '90s. Greenspan, Summers, and Rubin.
And they knew that traders would take advantage of them and that there would be a
absolutely.
large explosion, and they took advantage of the social impact of the deregulation as well.
Okay, and we saw that in 2008.
Yep.
And to a good extent. The next issue, I think it will be bigger, but I think Greenspan, at least not the other guys, but Greenspan knew that given the greed of the banker, that it was enough rope to hang themselves by deregulating these things, because the derivative bubble, as Buffett said, the weapon of mass financial destruction. I see how that could easily take down the entire financial system. Yes, it would be ridiculously, it's the worst chaos known to man.
Right.
But to me, it has to happen because those side bets need to be removed from society, and there's no other way to do it.
You're wrong.
What else
we
can we do?
We have an example. We're living that example right now, and I'll demonstrate that example. But let me point out that Christine Lagarde is resigning, or is retiring.
September 12th.
Right. Okay. So we can go into why she's doing that later on. But I think one of the key reasons that she's doing that is so a Deutsche Bank solution can be brought in that she can't implement, that she can't be involved in for a number of different reasons. Okay. But someone else can do it. And so whoever it is, so I'm looking to see who the candidates are for replacement, because one of them, or a couple of the potentials, the short list guys, are known to favor this kind of an approach. But I'll give you a concrete example. There's a crushing, huge derivative problem in the United States, gigantic, beyond anybody's understanding of it. And it did not destroy the dollar, it didn't destroy our political system. No one ever even knew that it occurred. And it is basically the student loan problem. But we don't have a student loan problem. You know why we don't have the derivative of a student loan problem, the ultimate crashing of all the banks and everything?
We can create money out of thin air?
Nope. Because of a classification change. So, right now, you've got, I'm going to say it in a very crude fashion, you have socialistic assholes, or assholes who think themselves to be socialists, who are trying to come up with the idea of free tuition here in the United States and the forgiveness of student debt. And that will never, ever happen. And this is known that it'll never happen, and it's never a worry. Why is it never a worry? Because student debt is not a liability. it is over 50% of our government's assets. So our government has, of everything that the government owns, half of it is an asset that is student debt.
Right.
And they've monetized that.
Mm-hmm.
It's known now that that's what's going to happen with the derivatives from Deutsche Bank.
So they've monetized it into asset-backed securities that they sold into like pension funds, or it's not held on their books, basically.
Correct. It's not held on the books. So the International Monetary Fund is going to take over all the derivative exposure for the failing Deutsche Bank when it finally craps out, and they won't take it as a liability. They'll take it as an asset, the same way that the United States government has taken the student debt as an asset. If we treated the student debt as a liability, China wouldn't deal with us because our dollar would be worth far less than their renminbi.
But wouldn't that, to me, that just kicks the can farther down the road.
That's all that's necessary. We don't have to resolve it. That's what everybody fails to understand. There's no need for resolution in our society at this stage. Ever. And you see it at some point, something's going to happen. And it's like, and it won't be mining of asteroids. You see these weird-ass ideas of, there's this asteroid out there that's so much gold that it'll make everybody on the planet a trillionaire. Okay, well, they'll never bring in that much gold because it would devalue the gold we've got, and there's no need for it anyway. But they'll get to something where they'll make a swap, and they'll say, well, the government's got, $180 trillion in student loan assets, right? Which we know to be a liability and a debt and so on.
Lousy credit and
all of that. And it's affecting all the students, and they're dying poor, and they're having to pay their student loans out of their Social Security when they're in their 60s and 70s. But at some point, the government's going to come along and something's going to happen. And I think it'll probably be an invention. And maybe the government then starts doing a one-for-one swap out of the debt stuff through a structure they set up. And they replace that one-for-one swap of dollars of debt, of student debt going out, for dollars of income produced by over-unity devices being manufactured here in the United States. Okay, and they'll just do it that way, and they'll just do a replacement, and there'll never, ever, ever be a need to reconcile. And as soon as we have it now, okay, we have over-unity devices now. Mm-hmm. There have been a number of them generated, or a number of them built and demonstrated. But we actually have an effective over-unity device right now in our social order, which is the software. Software at all levels costs very little. Coffee, sugar, pizza, and a programmer equals code.
Sure.
Okay, and if you get a good idea out of that code, that can be hugely income generation, because a good idea led to Facebook, Twitter, Google, all of these various different things that make all kinds of money. So one good idea in one particular area, manufactured and massaged in a particular way, substitutes ultimately for the 50% of the, or for all of that asset that is debt that the government is calling an asset now, just to get it out of the books and just to get it off of the books of the banks, so that no one ever has, so the system doesn't have to die. Mm-hmm. So if the goal is to keep the system running, we need not ever reconcile. We need not ever have sound money, even though we're going to have sound money in the form of cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. But we're going to change it ever so slowly. It'll just creep on in. There won't be a giant crash. So I used to think, indeed, there would be a giant crash. And then cryptocurrencies came along, and ever since then, I've been thinking more and more and more like Catherine Austin Fitts, that all they were doing was keeping the thing ticking over until they had a solution. Now there's the solution, emerging organically out of the woodwork, the way all solutions emerge, that the government's just going to fold in, software folds in, it allows the cryptocurrencies to exist, it makes it that much more powerful, because we could actually do blockchain and consensus on paper and by hand if we wanted. And so that's our solution. We don't have to have the derivative crash that ends the entire monetary system. And in fact, if we look at it, China could just say, yeah, we know that Deutsche Bank failed and that those derivatives are useless, but we're a centralized government and we'll make those people whole that had
they can create money out of there.
So no big deal, right?
Okay.
So why should we ever really sweat that? And so once you take that off your mind, it becomes very liberating to look at things in a different world or different way. And that's what led me to the trying to describe what the data was describing with the sci-fi world, and then even more importantly, the report about the soaring 20s. Because let's imagine for a second that we're in an echo period, okay? And that we're echoing the trust busting of the 1904, the creation of a new monetary system of 1913, which led to wars. We won't have those because software is eliminating wars now, right? There's no need to have millions of people with guns when you can have software take out your enemy by taking down the SCADA system and having their stuff collapse. So we won't have the World War thing, but we will have the soaring 20s, just the way we had the roaring 20s in the past. What did you have at the time of the roaring 20s? You had a particular generation that was at a particular age, the introduction of new money, which led to new credit, pushing the ability of money to go to younger people further down in the age group, which always spreads it out to a broader population. The younger people don't hold on to it the way the older people do. They get it into circulation, which pumps up the economy because it's all about velocity. And it led to the whole social change issues, right? The sexual revolution of the 1920s, the flappers, the smoking by women, ultimately the formation of the suffragettes and the voting by women that was funded by the Rockefellers, but that was basically in order to bring in Standard Oil and all these other issues.
But it also brings, a boom and bust, and the bust came in 29, and then 33 they confiscated gold.
But that's an artifact of the paper money and the fact that we had to have the paper circulate and this kind of thing. With the digital world, we don't have the boom and bust.
Right, exactly.
But we do have an oscillation at the moment. And that oscillation we see in the prices in just huge levels of swings within the crocodile teeth at just astronomical levels that have never hit any other kind of an asset. And so if you look at Bitcoin, they tout it as the best performing currency. So let's take that word out, because if you do a currency swap, there's no taxes. Theoretically, there's no gain. It's a swap for value with some small level of arbitrage. But if we just called Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency as something else, like technology, right? And we've got a technology here that is going to bring us into a world of speed, surety, because we can always look back at the transactions and all of these different things that eliminate the artifacts that caused the boom and bust of the previous technology that was applied to money. Because you have to think about it, we're dealing in coins. And the coins are just substitution for food. And once we got the coins, the gold and silver coins circulating, America's on a boom and we're circulating more gold and silver. We have a gold expansion with these kind of things. We circulate more. Everybody's in a big boom kind of a period. But gold has fallacies. It has problems, flaws. Can be stolen. No way of identifying it. Well,
we don't know how much there is.
Right, and we've eliminated that with Bitcoin, with the cryptocurrencies. We can see who owns it. We know how much there's going to be. We can see the speed of it's being created. So the artifacts of one system, which was the gold and silver, went into the new system, which was paper. More fluid, quicker, cheaper, easier, but it has its own problems. You print a lot of paper and then you get the booms.
Yep.
And then you don't print it out enough and you get the bust.
Yeah.
But that's going away now because we've got this new technology. So cryptocurrencies are going to have their own artifacts which will affect our economies in different ways, but we won't have to worry about the derivatives, the booms and the bust and everything.
Well, if we don't have a bust, then we're going to see the quadrillions in investments in the old system be flooding into cryptos.
Correct.
Like quadrillions.
Correct.
Flooding. And I mean, to me, I don't want a bust. But I see the problems in the old system. So if they manage to keep it up and running, the amount of flow, and it'll be like a fire hose into a Dixie cup coming into the cryptos.
I agree. And that's why it's foolish to predict this year or next year for $100,000 parties on our way to $1 million for Bitcoin and higher.
Oh,
okay, because we are looking at a flood of the system into the new system. And that's the way software is. Having done this, okay, so I'm 66 years old. I had an effective working life in software. I was late. I was an old starter, right? A late starter. So I didn't start in my 20s. I worked on computers in my 20s, but until we got into the PCs, I didn't get really serious about it, okay? So say that I've had 36 years worth of work in the software. I've never ever worked and I worked for lots of companies and lots of different organizations digitizing the world into software. And I've never ever worked for a firm or a company where anything crashed as we were introducing the new system. Yes, you would have problems with the new system not working appropriately, and there's a time of debugging, right? And then once it's stable, and off you go. And so, but the two systems are compatible until basically you let the old system fade away. So we still have legacies of it all. We still have, even today, we still have the Dewey Decimal System card files in libraries.
My mom was a librarian at Cal.
Yeah, and you still do Dewey Decimal System.
It's amazing, they still have it.
But who cares, because you've got digital search, right?
Right.
But the two systems are compatible, but one's going to fade away until the other, it's just a remnant. And we've seen this with vacuum tubes. Mm-hmm. We see this with all of these kind of technologies.
I would absolutely, I mean, that is the best case scenario for humanity, for a lot of things, is that the old system stays intact, but at the same time, people come flooding into the new system and it dies off slowly. Not even slowly. Give it 10 years, 15 years.
Why even put a time frame on it?
True.
Okay, you've got people now, like this E-SETI guy, okay? The old hippie. He wants cash, he wants silver, he wants gold.
Yeah.
All right? So you still have people that are working on the gold standard, right? Mm-hmm. And this is how many years after the gold standard officially died off? Last century in 1933 when they seized the gold. That was effectively the end of it. Mm-hmm. Convertibility of paper to silver or gold ended in the 1950s. And the devaluation of the dimes and that kind of thing. Yeah. So but you still got people operating on that system now, and there's no reason, and they'll continue until they die. And there's no reason that shouldn't continue. Let them operate on it. It works. Yeah. It's interoperable. There's ports where you can get from one system to another. So in software, doesn't matter to me if you're running Unix, Linux, SCO Unix, any different variety of Windows or whatever. There's always a gateway between one system or the other, and they always speak the ones and zeros at its core, which is the value of the system. And so you can have as much interoperability going forward, no matter what happens. Mm-hmm. I'm not negative.
It gets back to when I was doing the road to Ruta theory originally. And everybody was saying the banks are going to crash. I'm like, well, and the bank and the Fed was bad. And I'm like, well, there's something else going on here at the Fed with the control mechanism and all that. Bix, you're way too optimistic. You're way too optimistic. I would say, Clif, you're way too optimistic, but I absolutely love it and want it to be.
And we have proof of it, though, from my data sets.
Okay. Well, exactly.
I had stuff in there that said that we would face, at this time, last year and into this year, there was long-term data sets that were saying that we're going to have a failure of the regional banks. And we are seeing that failure now, okay? And we're seeing the failure exactly where the software system said it would start up, which we would see the most visible results within real estate and so forth. Mm-hmm. And now it's quite true that the banks are not lending worth a damn. Mm-hmm. And real estate market is basically flattened seriously because there's no longer any kind of pumping in there. Mm-hmm. But now we're starting to see that a lot of the real estate market, there's new money coming in. Where is it coming in from? Crypto.
Tech and crypto.
Correct. So it's moving in. And so the old system of regional banks being the primary lender for mortgages and this kind of stuff, and the builder of business loans, they're not doing business loans worth a damn anymore. But hey, you can get ICOs, IPOs, any number of different alternative financing routes, and the systems are coexisting. So we didn't have a crash that killed off all of the banks. But if you looked at my data back in 2008, 2009, you could have made that supposition in your mind, even though it never said that all the banks were going to crash and die. It was just saying that these aspects of banking activity would no longer be effective by the time we get to this time, and sure enough, that's the case. Okay. So that being the case, so if we look at it this way, we can say, examining all of the work that I've done with the WebBot stuff over time, if you apply a filter to it that presumes the effective, slow, continuous progression of humanity, and you look at all of that data with this underlying framework, you're going to be astoundingly accurate at being able to make predictions about what's going to go on based on the predictions that were made. Because you'll be able to say, no, the regional banks are not actually going to collapse and disappear and shutter their doors, but they'll shrink down, they'll hire less people, they'll be eaten up by software going through money, even though the data gives you implications that could be taken as crashing of the banks and folding of the door or closing the doors and stuff. It never actually really says they're going to go out of business or anything. It just says that business is going to change radically. Yeah. And so it actually turns out to be as much as it focused on negative stuff, it turns out to be a very positive overall view of everything. And it led me to this particular state where I'm at the moment, right? I'm wildly optimistic about the stuff that's going on because I've seen that magazine show up in the language.
I got to get that. What was it called again?
Matter. It's produced by the same people that produce Cell and Immunity and some of these heavy-duty, and they're one of the major publishers of peer-reviewed journals and things.
Okay.
And it's an amazing book magazine. But bear in mind, it's a peer-reviewed, which there's flaws with that system.
Yeah.
It's centrally produced, so it's only a temporal marker. You can look beyond that magazine and get into things like the discourse or Discord and GitHub and Slack and some of these other things where you now find scientists talking with computer programmers because they're intimately involved in running computer simulations on materials and so on and so on. And you see that, holy crap, there's a lot of activity going on this planet. Yeah.
We've gone an awesome long time.
Holy shit.
That's round 2. I want to thank Clif High for blowing our mind once again. And I love that his conclusion is ultimately fairly positive.
Yeah.
And I tend to gravitate towards that type of stuff anyway.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, life's a bitch and we all die, but we can have fun in the meantime.
There we go. I was going to say something else, but no. Thank you guys for watching, and good luck to everybody.
Yeah. And buy cryptos.
Buy lots of cryptos.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this is Bix. Thank you for watching the 3-part interview with Clif High. Amazing stuff. I want to thank Clif for inviting myself and my wife Amy into his house, literally, into his home area. It's fun to see where he lives and how he lives. He is a down-to-earth, honest guy that I love to death, and I know many of you do too. If you want to see all 3 interviews, go to Road to Ruda, right there at the top. Ruda's interviews with Clif High in the house. And there we are, and all 3 interviews are linked below. Also, if you want to subscribe to Road to Ruda, hit subscribe today, and you will get your shot at, right now we're giving away Veritasium. Not for much longer, though. So if you're looking to get some Veritasium in your pocket, join the private Road to Ruda. Also, we have a Patreon channel that all 3 interviews are posted on. So go to Patreon. It's only $10 a month. It helps support us as YouTube is killing us, as we all know. So again, I want to thank Clif High, and hopefully we'll do this again next year. Hopefully, I put the little seed into him. Hey, maybe we can do this every year. He's like, yeah, come on up. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, thanks again to Clif, and thank you guys, and good luck down there in this crazy world we live in. I'm hoping Clif is right, that we have a smooth transition. But always, as always, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. This is Bix Weir signing off.